Is the carnivore diet not working for you? Hey, with Shake and Bacon, my name is Bruno Panucci. I hope you're doing well. So I've lost 150 pounds doing the carnivore diet and zero carb eating, and I'm still going. I still have a ways to go, and it's going pretty well. I've just been working through a recent weight plateau that I've had for a while. What's interesting is every now and then I run across someone who's tried the carnivore diet. Some people are pretty impartial about it, and they say, well, no, it just didn't work for me. And other people, they're like, it was one of the worst decisions I ever made. And I'm really like, okay, what version of carnivore are you doing? Because it's just a meat only diet. So you think, well, how many versions of carnivore are there? Well, there's quite a bit. And you can look up lots of different videos on the topic about different types of carnivore between high fat, moderate protein, and vice versa, and eating windows that you try it out in, and the types of food you're eating. Some people have to go really strict and only have like strict red meat or ruminant meat. Other people can have other things in their diet. Some people rely too heavily on dairy. Now, the thing is, you have to ask, what is your goal? Are you doing it just to lose weight? Well, you might have to just be a little more strict in the beginning with that. Are you doing it because you're trying to manage a sugar and carbohydrate addiction? Are you doing it because you just want to feel better day to day and you want to get rid of some joint inflammation? Well, you have to ask yourself, what is your why? You have to ask yourself why you tried it to begin with. And maybe you just weren't satisfied with it. You like meat, but you just can't have only meat. Maybe you just didn't like how restrictive it was. Maybe it felt restrictive to you. Lots of people who stick with a carnivore diet, they don't find it restrictive because though one little area of their world, their diet, is restricted to a certain amount of food, the rest of the world has opened up to them. They feel better. Their blood work comes back better. They have better energy. They're not eating as much junk food, though you can eat junk food on a carnivore diet. There's lots of processed meats you can eat and still say you're on a carnivore diet. I mean, you could live off hot dogs if you wanted, or processed meat, and still say you're sticking to a carnivore diet, but you're like, it didn't work for me. So you have to ask why you're doing it. If you're doing it to feel better, you might want to do a particular type of carnivore. If you're doing it because you just want to lose weight and the side effect is feeling better, well, you might want to watch that you're not having dairy in there. Some people don't realize sometimes that they're cheating on a carnivore diet, and they're like, well, how am I cheating? And they're like, well, you're still having a lot of sugar substitutes. Yes, it's a zero carb diet, but it's supposed to be a meat only diet. So when you're having, say, sugar substitutes and it's spiking your insulin, and insulin being a hormone causes a lot of underlying inflammation and different pathologies to get worse in your body, what happens is it can aggravate it. And you think, well, I did carnivore and it didn't work, but I was still having stevia in my coffee. How many coffees did you have a day? Oh, like I cut down to like 3 or 4. Well, maybe that's not really what's going on because it's still having an effect on your insulin. And research that yourself. You could find, if you do some research, how there are insulin spikes after you have something like aspartame or stevia. And there are other articles that say you can't get an insulin spike after you have something like stevia. So you're going to have to make your mind up for yourself, or you can just cut to the chase and go to Dr. Barry's channel, and he's going to be able to talk to you more about this in some of his videos. So I'm sure he's covered this topic before. And the beauty of a carnivore diet for most people is, if you're eating more, you're going to feel good, and it also balances out everything in your body anyway, unless you have some serious health problems. What happens is everything starts to balance out and the weight loss eventually happens. Most people notice it early on, but the older you get, the more damaged your body is. Think about that. There's a good chance by the time you're in your 40s, 50s, or 60s, if you've been yo-yo dieting or you've just led an unhealthy lifestyle, maybe you've been active but have had a bad diet, or vice versa, or both, what happens is you're just at the point where you have decades worth of damage done, and it takes a while to undo that. I hit a plateau that lasted over a year and a half, and that makes sense. Now, one of the things that helped manage my plateau before I got there was I realized I had normal A1C, normal blood sugar, but high fasting insulin. So I started taking a product called berberine to manage that, and I didn't have any other health complications with gout going into a carnivore diet. And when I stopped losing weight, looking back, it was when I stopped taking the berberine. I took the berberine because I knew I had high fasting insulin, and I put it to the test and it worked. So not only did I start losing weight, it was the last gout attack I ever had, and I felt great doing that. I've been on and off berberine since then. And I also realized last week, part of the reason why I had that plateau, and as I just touched on, was earlier in the year I had my fasting insulin checked and it was really high. It was 255 millimoles, I think it was measured at, millimoles, and the cutoff is like 180 in Canada. So for American numbers, that's like a 42 for your fasting insulin. And that's definitely not a good number to be at after a year and a half at the time of strict carnivore, strict. What I forgot I did afterwards was I started taking berberine again. I started taking one with every meal. And then after a couple months, I got my blood tested. And to my surprise, my insulin was better and my LDL cholesterol was way better. And I thought, wow, that was amazing. And I hadn't taken berberine in about 2 or 3 weeks by that point. And I totally forgot because my life was a bit of a whirlwind. I was moving and I was doing a lot of things and I was out of the country for a while. And by the time I got back, I got my blood tested thinking everything was going to go better because I was also doing multiple small meals, high fat at the time. And to my surprise, when I got back, all my numbers were back up and they're elevated again. And I was like, why did I do that? How did that happen? And I didn't realize, I totally forgot in the whirlwind before I left that I was taking berberine for about 6 to 8 weeks. And the leftover effect of that berberine was obviously still in play when I got my blood tested after about a week and a half of being where I was. So by the time I got it tested again over a month later, thinking those numbers were going to look good, they were high again. And I was like, why did I backpedal? I did nothing different. I was under stress before. I'm under stress now. It's not a stress issue. And I didn't realize till last week. I was talking with my brother and I mentioned that I was taking berberine earlier in the year. And that's when I thought, that's it. It was the berberine. I'm doing something a little different to manage my insulin now. That was my experience. I might have turned around from a weight loss point of view and said, oh, carnivore only got me so far. It wasn't working that well for me. When really, I still just had a really damaged liver and pancreas, obviously. And my body was making way too much insulin to keep my blood sugar under control because every time I've ever started a carnivore diet, and whether I stuck with it or not, within a week or two, my blood sugar was always perfect. A1C, perfect. They never bothered to test my fasting insulin. So this is where blood work can be a bonus for you if you're hitting plateaus. Maybe you're having difficulty with your sleep. Maybe you're not getting enough fat. So when people say they tried a carnivore diet and they just didn't feel good on it, you have to kind of do a little bit more research and ask, okay, why is that? Now there's some great forums you can check out. And one of them is Zeroing In on Health. So you can go on Facebook and check some of that out. Yes, you can find a lot of help online with videos from people who've been doing something like this before. There's not much science. So you can't argue the science, good or bad, towards carnivore because there's really not much science directed towards a carnivore diet. Unfortunately, for all you people out there in YouTube land, it's all anecdotal. So you have to look and see what other people have gone through, the same frustrations that you were going through when you did your carnivore diet, and see if you can relate to it and see if there's anything that you might be able to tweak if you're going to give this a better shot. Maybe you're just trying to up your carnivore game because you have a hard time dealing with sugar and carbohydrate addiction. There's lots of different coaches out there. Kelly Hogan is a coach who's been doing this for over 13 years as a carnivore. She's actually coming up to her 14th year very soon, and she did zero carb for 5 years before that. She has a lot of experience and she coaches regularly. I think now she's up to like almost 380 or 400 people a month that she's coaching doing a carnivore diet. And she's always said that before too. And she runs into people who just carnivore didn't work out for them and they didn't feel good on it. She was always thinking like, what kind of carnivore were you doing? And sometimes it's just a matter of upping your fat. I went through that where I was eating too lean for a while. I went through the window where I wasn't eating much. I went through the window where I was eating too much. You have to experiment and see how your body's adapting to it. And after some give or take, see how it goes. But you can't just do something for 3 weeks or even 2 months and then just quit, especially since you get amazing results after the first couple of weeks typically. And then people hit these other strides. They get to like the 3-month mark and they're like, wow, I feel even better than I did the first week. And then it's like this whole other level of carnivore. So if you do something, give it a shot, see how it goes. I really appreciate you tuning into this video. Thanks a lot and take care.